Good afternoon to everybody. I know we've hit this challenging time of the day where the attention span and the ability to focus decreases dramatically. I promise the topic is simple. It's about relationships. We all understand relationships one way or another. Within the next few minutes, we will try to discuss the importance of relationships in building a healthy product environment, a healthy environment that all the product teams can work in. A couple of sentences on the event. First, let me start with my thanks to the organizers, to all these people that help us come together, gather together. It brings me joy to see this increasing community of people working with or around products. It's a pleasure to see so many people joining their forces, and I think that this type of initiatives are particularly helpful in building an outgoing, a creative mentality that we all need, especially in our country. My name is Panagiotis Menoudakis, and within the next little while, we'll try to share our experience in the importance of building efficient and effective relationships between product management, product development, and project teams. It is fair to say at this point that not everything, but most of our experience is coming from the side of product development that has to do with the large-scale projects of this type, the B2B, the B2G, the multi-annual and multi-million type of investments, but we believe that the topic of relationships is generic enough to be applicable to all the different cases. So it's something light that we all understand, no background needed to get the concept. So I'm hoping that what we will share today as best practices, lessons learned, will be applicable to what you guys are doing. Before we start discussing relationships, let us agree on the mission. What is the mission at hand? And it is important to understand that most of us in this room, or the nice people that are connected remotely, are all been working with, around, or for products. And what that means, it means that our organization has embraced a product-driven mentality, that they have decided to invest in a product-driven world. And there's a lot of different reasons why one might choose to do this, why an organization might choose to do this. And it could be any of the nice things that we see here, like the fact that it takes less time to develop once you have established a solid product, that it might lead to reduced costs, or things might be available from day one, the increased reliability, the structured support, the good documentation, or the continuous evolution. But it is true to accept that building around a product core is something that brings wisdom in a box. It gives a safer starting point, and it provides guidance to system integrations and projects that have been external or your own projects. And at the end of the day, in the aftermath, it also keeps projects alive, stay alive after their completion. But regardless of the reason, we can all accept that investing in a product is a multi-layer investment. And it's a multi-layer investment that goes far beyond just the technical aspects of what is being done here. So working with a product is not just a technology utilization exercise. On the contrary, working effectively with a product is more about making best use of all the different features, the achievements, the support, and the ecosystems that it brings with it. And it's many of those things. Let's add some mobility here. And it could be any of those things that you build on top of technology, like your architecture, the value-added layer, the business logic that your people, the know-how of your people that have been building around the product and what you do from a technical perspective, the configuration, deployment, release tools, or the marketing aspect of things like packaging, licensing, pricing, the ownership, all the work on intellectual property, or the software elements like market awareness, recognizability, the partnerships that you build around it, the install base, all these important things are part of the investment. Which brings us to the mission of protecting the product core. So protecting the product core, protecting the sanity of the product core is protecting the investment and the success and the viability of the endeavor itself. Of course, the product core, and this is what brings us to the relationships with the market, is something that needs to live in the real world, in the real market, which implies that we need to build that type of readiness, that type of predictability that is needed to provide all this support and the reliability that needs to come with it. And we need to define our red lines, we need to define our rules, as well as the processes and the tool that go with it and support all this. But all this cannot work without building dependable relationships. And this is the area that we want to focus on. And there's particular importance in the choice of the word dependable, as opposed to other things like a nice or a friendly relationship. Dependable has to do with the fact that the users of your product need to depend on it, to be able to lean on it, to be able to predict the outcome of what they do based on what you have created. So it's these relationships that we will discuss in the next few slides, the next 10, 15 minutes. And I'll start by saying that there's a lot of stakeholders in this game, a lot of stakeholders. For each one of them, one can write a book about. And it's a bit outside the context and the scope of what we are discussing today. What we will focus on is this interesting triangle that we have on the bottom left side. This triangle between product management, product engineering, and the product consumers. Your product consumers being anybody from the external projects represented by the project managers or the account managers, the system integrators that work with your products, or your partners. The reason why we focus in this triangle and this type of relationship is that if you manage to effectively solve and manage the relationships within this triangle, you have probably won the game. Of course, all other relationships with stakeholders are important, but 90% of your time, you'll spend it in here. And although it's fair to say that product engineering has this critical mission to deliver a release scope on time and in the expected quality, not an easy task, it's also fair to say that product management has that vital orchestration role in managing the communication between stakeholders, and it continuously needs to maneuver through things like the product planning, the market expectations, the corporate investment, the return on investment and the targets of it, the outlining of product behavior and the monitoring of how well it's been done, as well as assisting product consumers, being the projects, to meet their goals while handling those tricky dependencies and the need and the tendencies to cut corners when it comes to processes, communications, or channels. We will touch on this last one particularly, especially when we're discussing this dotted blue line. There's a little bit of early coloring on the slides, but we'll go through this. There was a little bit of coloring that was helping us in this discussion, but let's use the shaping. Let's go back to our triangle. There's an underlying assumption in this triangle. And the underlying assumption is that there is a separate product engineering team working not in isolation, but it's in nice separation from the engineering teams that are working with the product. This is not always the truth, and we've seen a lot of different horror stories of any sorts of combination. But for the sake of our discussion, let's accept that this is the truth, mostly coming from our experience that says that this is the only viable way forward to keep the engineering team working on the product away from what's being done with the end customer. Now, going back to that sensitive orchestration role of product management, I would start by saying that although product management needs to keep consistently in mind all those softer elements like the market reaction, the investors, the budget, the time to market, licensing, competition, et cetera, it is important to be able to manage effectively and efficiently the relationships within this triangle. So from left to right, if we look at the product management to product consumer relationships, the multiple arrows, this is by nature and one-to-many relationship. It is the communication to the outside world, the communication to the consumers of what you are creating. This is probably the most difficult part to manage. This is the most difficult part of building the relationship, or that set of relationships between your product world and the outside world. As I said, it's in one-to-many relationships, so that brings by nature the difficulty of managing things that are necessarily not in line with your corporation culture. So even if you manage to mature within your corporation and do things right and streamline your processes and smoothen things up, that does not mean that the other side is at the same level as you are. This type of communication is very difficult, and it can create a lot of irrational traffic. And that is the reason why you need to particularly be careful to filter, manage, and not bring in the product world this communication unfiltered. This is probably the most important task of a product manager, as especially in successful products, you get an avalanche of requests, continuous requests, rational and irrational requests. So that is that part of the communication, and we'll touch on it on ways to manage it, improve it, and keep maintaining it. On the right side, we have a relationship between product management and product engineering. I would like to make a note here that we call these teams product management and product engineering. In this world, there's no product and engineering. There's product management and product engineering. They're both product. It's important to keep that in mind. And it's important to keep that in mind because they are co-responsible for delivering the same thing, covering different aspects of the story, of course. But product management needs, at all times, through this continuous daily relationship, to convey the messages and be very close to product engineering about what is being made, make sure that product engineering has understood what is being made, and we'll touch on this on the next slide, but product engineering also have the responsibility and should stay close to product management to make sure they understand and that they explain not only what they're doing, but also the challenges coming ahead so that they can decide together when some of those challenges come up. And I left for last the trickiest part of the communication, which is that sneaky, tricky, direct communication between product engineering and the outside world, very frequently between engineers. And although this is sometimes needed, it can be highly disruptive. It can be highly disruptive because your product development cycles have a completely different timing than the timing that's out there. This is a world of urgencies. This is a world of things that need to be done yesterday. This is a forward-thinking world. If you let these two worlds communicate directly without channeling, monitoring, filtering things, it can easily get chaotic. So I'm not saying that we should not allow this type of communication, but it should in all cases happen with the overseeing eye of product management. You need to be able, as product managers, to be on top of this communication and make sure that it serves a purpose when it's actually needed. So how do I do this? So it all sounds nice, but how do I go about it? So if I was to give a quick survival guide to new product management, yeah, I would include the following things in this list, in the following bullets. Of course, you need corporate support. You need your corporation to be able to support and say, this is what its role is supposed to be doing. Maybe go as far as put together a responsibility matrix at corporate level to say, this is the role of the portfolio manager, this is the role of the product manager, this is what the architect should be doing. This helps all the stakeholders understand their role and brings a bit of a viable and a behavior pattern so that they all have an understanding of where their job starts and stops. But the most important part is to be able to earn the respect of that community, to be able to be allowed to control, manage, and make those relationships effective and efficient. You need to earn the respect. And respect is something that is by nature earned, not demanded. To earn the respect, you need to do a lot of things, a lot of different things with everybody involved in this community. You need to run your internal education sessions on your product. This can be done through training sessions covering all different angles of what you do and why you do it. You need to go as far as you can with explaining the benefits to your engineering teams. Technical teams love to hear about the importance of what they create, love to hear stories about how it's applied and the value that it brings to the outside world, to the international community. Sharing market understanding and priority with your business development people, with your sales people. This is your ears and your eyes to the market. You can't see and hear everything yourself. You need to be in close collaboration with your business development teams, and these are the people that will help you with the long-term prioritization or reprioritization of what you do. This can be done in the form of regular go-to-market sessions. Mostly, I think I heard one of the co-speakers say earlier, be accessible and be visible, stay visible, and set up those frequent channels, those frequent communication channels with the project stakeholders. That can be done through regular weekly or bi-weekly project sessions, and in those sessions, try to explain all your product updates. Go as far as throw in a few demos here and there. Share the challenges. There's nothing wrong with sharing the challenges that you're facing with your consumers. It actually builds an environment of confidence and understanding, assuming that it's not an earth-shattering challenge that you're facing. It's important to share with the community of users the challenges, and especially ideas on how to overcome the challenges, which brings us to welcoming opinions and suggestions. Enable those controlled direct technical discussions, that is the dotted line that we saw earlier, but stay on top of it. Use all the processes and the tools that you can to stay on top of it and be able to understand what is going on. There's an interesting suggestion here, and what that says, the second last bullet, is that try not to get alienated from the market. Try to stay close and not live in an isolated world. Try to be part of those complex projects. Try to be part of the early stages of the project. And that can be done by an idea, providing consulting services. It could be that you or your team can provide consulting services in the early stages of a project. That makes you part of the project. Become one with your product engineering team. And that can be done with the regular and ad hoc communication as needed on a weekly basis through your syncs, through your scheduled backlog refinements, the release planning, the preparation, the ad hoc meetings, but be one with the product engineering team. This is the only way forward, not in a phased and remote way. And if all this sounds overwhelming and too much to do, I think the trick here is that one thing we always need to have in mind, and I see a lot of colleagues falling in that trap, is that product management is done in 1 month, or to be more politically correct, in one person show. Build a team, especially if your product is complex enough, if it's elaborate enough, if it justifies a bigger team that might, in some cases require a variety of skills. Do build a team. Build your product management team to assist you. When it comes to earning the respect, at the end of the day, you will be judged by the effectiveness of your decision-making. And the decision-making is something that you will have to do, as by nature, product management is a decision-making role. So you need to be ready to make and explain tough decisions, things like what happens in reprioritization, conflicts between projects, or conflicts with your roadmap and development cycles, those hateful last-minute requests, judging on the usefulness of things that you're not an expert on. Very frequently, you will be faced with the challenge, with the request to adopt something in your product, technology or other, that you don't fully understand, or you might have not even heard before. You need to be able to educate yourself fast enough to make a judgment call on if this is needed or not, on the usefulness of it or not. And you need to be able to handle those scope and timeline slippages. It happens, inevitably. Regardless of how well you schedule or you plan things, slippage will happen. So you need to make some judgment calls. But what is important here is that the evolution of a product does not stop. Things need to keep moving forward. So do discuss options with your engineers as a product manager, but do not delay your decisions. Do welcome the dialogue with projects, and do allow escalations as needed, but try to contain them and be on top of things. Fight for your plan A, but always have handy a plan B in case things go south, and they will occasionally. Embrace those customer and market concerns that might be time-consuming, but also consult towards a rational way forward. It is important, and a lot of colleagues said it, to be close to the market and the customers, but it's also equally important to help your customers come closer to you. In the product world, where we don't work in a traditional waterfall model where you collect the requirements and you implement, both sides need to come together as close as possible to the product to help them come closer to you while you are keeping close to them. And use technology. In this difficult task, in this complex one-to-many setup and communication where things can easily get out of control, you need all the aid that technology can give you. So by all means, do create your chat rooms, your repositories for the information and the processes. Do build those useful real-time dashboards so that you can see things on a daily, momentarily, if possible, without having to put people together and ask them to create reports for you. Do create those real-time dashboards for your processes and your critical KPIs. Use the video recordings for not repeating time-consuming video and training sessions, statistics, all the coordination tools that there are out there for your alignment charts, your dynamic roadmap depictions. And go as far as using artificial intelligence, which is a trend of the day. So by all means, use all the technology support you can get. So last slide, what would be some key takeaways to take with you coming from our experience? In the list of do's, by all means, do invest on your relationships with stakeholders. Do become one with your product engineering team. Manage the external communication channels. Most of all, embrace the decision-making responsibility of the role. Build a product management team to assist you, and use all the technology support you can get. And in the shorter list of don'ts, do not close yourself in confinement. PDM, product management, is by nature an outgoing role. Do not try to do everything yourself, or you will hit your ceiling very, very quickly. And do not hesitate to ask for corporate-level support. There is no golden recipe for doing things right. This is coming from our experience, and I hope some of it can be useful in your difficult and interesting journey to conquering the world with your product. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Panagiotis. We have one question from the audience. Isn't there a risk of innovation being elusive in an organization where the mission is to protect the product core?
Innovation, sorry, help me with the first part of the question.
Isn't there a risk of innovation being elusive in an organization where the mission is to protect the product core?
I would say, although it's a bit of a generic question that can be answered in a lot of different angles, I think that the decision to go innovative or not is happening, is taking place at the initial stages of designing a product. So I'm assuming that the innovation part of this has been addressed in the initial stages. So it's after you address that innovation part and how you want to go forward that you then decide what you want to do and try to be a little bit conservative with your product core. There is a conservative element in protecting your core, indeed. But a product world is by nature a slower moving world than bespoke development. If that answers the questions, then I'll be more than happy to go deeper in such a discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.